more about who I'm talking to and who's listening, and also very keen for engagement afterwards. Let me just pull up my slides. Okay. Cool. Can you all see those clearly?
Yes.
Fantastic. So I have the opportunity to talk about advancing pharmaceutical research and development in Africa and what H3D has been doing. And in fact, our partnership with APN and with David is started through the H3D Foundation. So first of all, before I can start talking about what the H3D Foundation does, I'm going to have to give you a bit of background and history as to how we got here and about the H3D Center. So I'm going to start off by just talking about the H3D Drug Discovery and Development Center. So this is a center based at the University of Cape Town, in Cape Town, South Africa. And it started as an academic enterprise. And I think a number of you listening in today as well may also be academic researchers working in academic centers and wondering how to make an impact and how to actually move from academic research or basic research into a space where you can do translation or translational research and really start to have an impact on the many health problems that we face on the continent. So in 2010, Professor Kelly Chibali, who's the professor pictured here in the middle, he set up the center as a research center at the University of Cape Town. And his vision was to create a biotech-like space to really do translational drug discovery research within the University of Cape Town. So since 2010, we have grown dramatically. We're now 76 full-time staff members. This is not postgraduate students. Professor Chibali still has his postgraduate students. This is full-time researchers working on translational projects. So our vision as a center is really, sorry, I just moved my block, it's blocking the slides. It's really to be the leading organization for integrated drug discovery and development. And initially, we were focused on how do we do this as pioneers on the continent. And 10 years later, we're saying, well, we already are pioneering on this continent. How do we take it to that next level so that we are actually a global force to be reckoned with? And that's where the vision of the center is at the moment. So our mission focus is around infectious diseases. So primarily focused on tuberculosis, malaria, and antimicrobial resistance. But we're also looking at how do we make the medicines that we're producing more relevant to the African patient. So it's building African-specific models which will help improve treatment outcomes. And I think here what we're talking about is can we build into the drug discovery research phases models that will predict, for example, drug metabolism based on African livers or based on the microbiomes you find in African patient populations. And these are nuances that are not currently included in any of your global R&D that goes on. So really bringing this local focus to what we're doing. We also have what we call platform technologies, and these are cross-cutting research platforms to support drug discovery, but they themselves are not going to produce a drug. So for example, it could be our drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics platform or our TB biology platform. And as I think many of you will also be familiar with, when you're trying to do anything like this in our context, you have to include training as a core component. How do we build that pipeline of skills and keep the scientists in the space so that they don't contribute to the brain drain and we don't lose all our researchers and brightest minds to international global pharma, but we're actually able to train them up and retain them on the continent. So this is what we strive to do, and our mission as a center. We have been very successful to date, and this slide is just to give you an idea of what our current portfolio looks like and our current big funders. And you'll recognize in our big funders, we've got pharmaceutical partners like Merck and Johnson & Johnson. We've also got big names like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and USAID and NIH. On top of that, one of the reasons we've been able to be successful is that we have strong government support. And again, for any of you working in endeavors like this, working closely with your local government is critical. It lends a level of credibility, which helps other funders and international investors come and invest. So if I look at our center currently, about 30% of our funding is from local government and the rest is international investment. In terms of our programs, as I said before, we've got three main disease areas that we're focusing on. So the first is our malaria drug discovery platform, where we have actually taken compounds from really early stage hit discovery through to clinical trials. We don't conduct clinical trials ourselves. This is done through partners, but we did have a compound get it all the way through to phase 2 clinical trials before it was stopped for other reasons. And we currently have backup candidates that are progressing. On the TB drug discovery program as well, it's a much harder disease area to tackle because of the complexities of the disease and the pathogen biology as well. But we do have a compound which is almost at that clinical selection phase where we're ready to look at it as a potential to go into the clinic. And then one of our newer programs is around new antibiotics and specifically targeting gram-negative precision antibiotics for your hospital-acquired infections. So it's where are these real new cases where the current antibiotics are just failing and we have massive drug resistance and we need something else in the toolbox that can help in those targeted cases. And that's really what we're trying to develop. Those programs are still quite early stage, but we're pushing this quite aggressively with our partner, Johnson & Johnson. We have also just started to set up an API manufacturing laboratory. The idea here, again, in addressing local needs on the continent where all our APIs are actually imported and we don't have enough local manufacturing capacity or process chemistry capacity. We wanted to set up a hub which would do two things. The one, it would serve as a training ground for process chemistry skills, but also to bring in cost competitive technology, and in this case it happens to be flow reactor technology from the States, to allow us to improve the synthesis of known generic antiretrovirals, which we would then partner with a local manufacturer who could then produce them on scale. And then finally, the final program is these technology platforms where we do actually offer our drug discovery services to researchers across the continent. As I mentioned earlier, Prof. Jabali still has an academic group, which is separate from the center. There's a lot of synergy working closely with postgraduate students. They do share labs and share facilities, and we have had examples of projects transition from the academic space into these more translational projects and vice versa. So if we stop a program because we don't think it's going to go forward, a student may then do more work around it and may discover some new or exciting biology that would help them take it forward or rescue it as a translation project. This is a quick snapshot of what are these platforms that I'm talking about. What do we actually do at H3D at the University of Cape Town? And here, the main laboratories we've got 2 medicinal chemistry laboratories. We have also set up some computational or CAD facilities, and we are also developing AI and machine learning models to help fast track our programs. Another big area we've got is a laboratory called our Drug Metabolism and Pharmacokinetics Laboratory, where we do all the in vitro ADME assays, where ADME stands for absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, which starts to predict how a particular compound or potential drug candidate would interact in a biological system. And then the PK laboratory, where you actually look at the pharmacokinetics when you do administer that substance to a mouse or a rat. And you can start to see how much of that potential drug is actually making it into the bloodstream, how is it excreted, how is it metabolized. And this helps you to build models which could predict your dose when you get to humans in the clinical phases. We also have the biology platforms where our focus is on malaria biology, tuberculosis biology, and AMR biology. And in addition to this, we do cytotoxicity cross-screening to check that our agents, which are killing the infectious pathogens, are not actually killing the mammalian cells. And finally, we've got a platform which we call our entomology platform, but really it's our structural biology, looking at what targets are we hitting, can we develop biochemical assays to test directly against those targets rather than the whole cell phenotypic screening that we're doing on the main platforms. And all of this is underpinned by proper data storage and sample management to ensure that we've got a robust system and research hub. As I've already mentioned, we do work with Johnson & Johnson, and in fact, it was a big achievement for our center last year where we were named as a Johnson & Johnson Satellite Center for Global Health Discovery. So Johnson & Johnson have set up 3 centers across the globe, so one in London, one in Singapore, and then one in Cape Town. And we are their partners for this, really trying to develop a hub or strong research center focused on antimicrobial resistance and developing first-in-class gram-negative therapeutics. This gives a snapshot of our current partnerships across the globe. And also just to say, I mean, with this sort of space in health innovation, you're never going to be doing it on your own. And the H3D model has always been to work with partners and in partnerships to complete these programs. So you can see we currently have more than 30 active international research collaborations working on these projects and making sure that our portfolio is progressing. And we're also supporting 17 different research institutions across the continent on their drug discovery programs. Okay, so this brings me to the H3D Foundation. So with the center growing and thriving and strengthening as it had since 2010, we had done a lot of work in terms of growing capacity and developing drug discovery capacity and looking beyond Cape Town and UCT, looking at the continent and what we can do to really boost health innovation across the continent. So this was why in 2019, we decided to found the H3D Foundation, which is a not-for-profit entity separate from the university. And the idea was that we'd use this as a vehicle to really complement the work that we'd already done at the center, but really look Pan-African, how can we create an absorptive capacity for securing, building, and retaining skilled African scientists within innovative R&D. So it's not, the H3D Foundation is a virtual entity. All three of us pictured there, that's myself and Professor Kelly Chibali, as well as Aisha Bandekar, who's our head of finance. We're all employed at the H3D Center. But we set up this foundation as a virtual entity to really attract more funding, coordinate efforts across the continent, and help to build capacity at other institutions. So here's the mission of the foundation, and you'll see that there are differences between what the foundation is trying to achieve and what the research center is trying to achieve. So for us as the foundation, one of the things that we wanted to really also do is to build a credible voice for evidence-based global health views. And this, again, is in response to during COVID, the COVID pandemic, which, as you'll see, it's pretty much as we founded the foundation, COVID hit, and we had a lot of conversations in the first year about what do we really need as a continent. And one of the things that we need is we need credible voices from R&D and innovation, which are based on the continent. So we need to be able to rely on ourselves. Because I think a lot of the mistrust and disinformation that happened during that time, it didn't help. It didn't help the pharmaceutical industry at all. It didn't help that we were getting these conflicting international voices trying to tell us what to do. I think as a continent, we really need stronger voices coming forward that promote evidence-based research. We also really wanted to focus on building drug discovery capacity and capabilities. So what are those strategic initiatives that we need to do to catalyze more research on the continent? Where are those gaps that we need to be filling? So it's that unlocking and leveraging funding for infrastructure and development. We're in a privileged position as H3D, where we've got a lot of international connections. We've got good relationships with the pharmaceutical companies. We're actually, the H3D Foundation is a partner to IFPMA, which is the International Federation for Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, which means that we're networked in essentially with the CEOs of all the innovative pharmaceutical companies. With that sort of access, how can we coordinate so that more clinical trials come to the continent, more research funding comes to the continent, and that we're all working together? Because I think it's very clear that what we're trying to achieve as a continent and that independence that we need, but we need to have coordinated efforts to get there. So we want to use this foundation to unlock a lot of these opportunities to attract that investment. And then fourth on the list is really using science in job creation. And I think this is one of the key lessons we've learned at working closely with South African government in this space, where everyone who works in drug discovery and development knows that most projects will not actually make it to the patient. They'll not actually make it all the way through to the clinic. And yet it costs a lot of money. There's a massive investment to do this work. So why do it? And one of the strong draw cards, at least for local governments, is, well, we're creating jobs. We are creating jobs in science. This is highly specialized jobs. Yes, it is high risk research and not everything will translate, but we are creating this absorptive capacity to actually retain our scientists that we're training. And then finally, we want to also help with promoting proactive engagement between scientists and communities. There needs to be more talk. There needs to be more engagement. We need to, we can't be something that happens behind a closed door in the laboratory. So one of the programs that we work on is called Grand Challenges Africa Drug Discovery. And this is in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as Medicines for Malaria Venture and Science for Africa, which is based in Nairobi. I'm sure many of you know the Science for Africa Foundation. And in partnership with them, we put out a call for drug discovery programs. And the first call went out in 2019, and we were able to award eight of these Pan-African projects working on mainly on malaria, TB, and some neglected tropical diseases as well. And it was seed funding. They weren't large grants. They were in the order of about $100,000, and really to get some initial proof of concept work going. And from that first experience with cohort 1, we really seen the researchers started really, first of all, shifting their focus towards drug discovery work, where some of them were previously more academically focused, but also we started to build this community and this network. So in 2021, we released a second call, and again, just looking at who else can we bring in, who are these researchers who really want to move into the space, and we were able to award another 8 projects. Again, these projects were seed projects. None of them were going to deliver drug candidates at all, but they were moving into that space. They were engaging in it. They were validating targets. They were starting to do some hit identification, and again, we're forming these connections between the researchers, and we're seeing more and more collaboration between the researchers in the network because we're also able to bring them together every year or two. So from this, and this program is just ending now, most of those researchers are busy wrapping up with their closeout reports. We felt that the continent as a whole, we're ready to actually take it to the next level and put Pan-African drug discovery projects in place. And in fact, that is my next slide. I have to go to that in a moment. But so yeah, before I go into the Pan-African flagship projects, these are the other researchers we're working with. So we, in addition to the Grand Challenges projects, we worked with the Gates Foundation to establish a Ghana drug discovery hub. And here again, trying to duplicate what we've been able to achieve at the University of Cape Town to say, can Ghana be self-sufficient in terms of having medicinal chemistry, pharmacology, and biology all within the country, so that they can really start to run these integrated drug discovery programs. And that project's been going. We're now halfway into the second year, and they have really started to develop the capabilities and to get in place a really great malaria drug discovery program. Closer to home in South Africa, we again approached our local government to say, well, what can we be doing to help what we call the historically disadvantaged institutions in South Africa to develop their drug discovery capacity and research capacity? Because we need more universities training researchers operating the space, so that we do have a pipeline of talent, that we can reach that critical mass of human capacity in drug discovery. So we've been working with the University of Limpopo and University of Venda and Walter Sisulu University on TB drug discovery projects and malaria drug discovery projects. And again, this is through the partnership with H3D, we were able to unlock funding for each of these institutions in multi-million rand investments over multiple years. Like I said, so with the Gates Foundation, and in terms of the next step for our Pan-African flagship projects, we thought, well, let's take it to the next level. We're now going to put together a consortium. We're now going to put real investment behind this. And we've got project proposals, which are late stage finalization at the moment, of in the order of $2 to $2.5 million projects. So these are more substantial investments, both from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and LifeArc, to say, let's put together flagship projects with multiple partners with the aim of really getting out lead candidates for drug discovery projects. We got one flagship project that's focused on TB and one flagship project that's focused on malaria. And then also in the mix is, can we strengthen the African drug metabolism and pharmacokinetic network? For those of you who may or may not be aware, there is a company in Zimbabwe called AIBST, and they have been working on building drug discovery and pharmacokinetics platform. There's some work happening in Tanzania, some work happening in Ghana and in South Africa. And we're saying, well, what can we do to really strengthen that network of DMPK scientists so that we really are able to focus on African drug metabolism? And I think I did mention this earlier as well, but this is really also looking at the nuances of the genetics of that liver and the liver enzymes, which obviously influence how much drug is available and in turn influence how effective treatments are going to be. So how do we as H3D come in and support all these projects? What exactly are we doing? So the one thing we're doing is we're offering full access to our drug discovery platform. So that's over 100 assays that we're running routinely that the people in the network, the researchers, can access. They'll send us samples and we'll test them for them. They can also, we can help them with their data interpretation and research support. So understanding what the result means, what the next steps are. We do also offer scientific sabbaticals. So pictured here, this is Rabi Chacha from Nairobi. She's a researcher working for one of our Grand Challenge grantees. She recently visited our TB biology lab for 6 weeks to learn how to run assays and those TB biology assays. And then pictured on the right, this is a researcher from the University of Limpopo, a chemist who came and spent time in our lab, both for learning techniques, but also for access to equipment and facilities that he doesn't have at his own institution. In addition to this, we've been running what we call a global health mentorship program. And this is where, again, leveraging the network that we have in place, we're able to identify international professional people working in the pharmaceutical companies who would be prepared to be mentors for researchers at our different sites. And so part of the program, all the mentees who signed into it were matched with a suitable industry mentor. We then gave them a structure to the mentorship to help guide those initial conversations and to give it a little bit of direction, because obviously mentorship it's a very personal journey, but it also can be quite challenging to get it going. And the thematic areas that we provide as guidance are around the scientific process, scientific communication, personal interactions, career progression, and scientific responsibility. And we see that the mentees who come through this program, it ranges from early stage researchers to people who are professors or PIs at their research institutions. And what they get out of it is very much tailored to their environment and what they needed from mentorship. But we've seen people grow in their careers, really dramatically develop in terms of how they communicate the science that they're doing. We've seen partnerships where it's developed into research collaborations with the mentors, and where they put out joint review articles or publications. But really, this also feeds into building that network and ecosystem to help researchers to establish that international footprint. We do offer workshops and webinars. This is usually done. We do really believe that in this space, in this health innovation space, you learn by doing it. So most of the training that you get is done on the job while working on a project together. And that's why if you look at our capacity building programs with the other universities, we're saying, well, let's work on a drug discovery project together. And through that, we're going to be able to train researchers in the space. But this is complemented by in-person workshops. So usually what we do is we'll have a hands-on workshop of about 25 to 30 people in a room learning a particular tool or technique. The pictures at the bottom are actually from an AI workshop that we ran, learning how to use these AI models and tools to apply them to research projects. So this was a very useful applied workshop that we ran. We also have our webinar program, which is more open. And the idea with the webinar program is it gives our researchers from different disciplines and across the network exposure to the different types of disciplines in drug discovery and the different work that's being done. And in fact, when we started with our webinar program, it was an H3D internal program. And we did it because we found that someone could be a chemist working on a project and have no idea what the biologist actually does, and no understanding of the nuances of doing the test to see whether it's active against TB, and no real depth of understanding in terms of what it means if the microsomal stability or solubility of a compound is 5 micrograms per mil. What does that mean for the drug? So for us, even just you can be a really excellent scientist, but you're going to be a scientist in a particular discipline. And in order to be successful in drug discovery, you need to have that interdisciplinary awareness. So the webinars were a way for us to grow that awareness, to let the scientists from the different disciplines showcase what they do. And since we've opened it up more widely, so anyone can sign up for these webinars, we've also been bringing greater diversity in terms of speakers, in terms of exposure to what do we mean when we talk about health innovation and that whole value chain, right from early stage biology through to the clinic. One of the projects that we're busy working on as well is we want to launch a MOOC. So a MOOC is one of these massive open online courses. We can do this through UCT as an accredited course. And really the gap that we were trying to fill is when someone's thinking about moving into this space, there is so much to learn. And we find that a lot of the time researchers are operating in silos. So again, if you're a clinician, you may be a great clinician, but have no idea what it actually takes at the early stage of drug discovery. And the same is true in the reverse. Someone doing drug discovery thinks their compound is great, it's going to be a drug, with no concept or notion of what it means to the patient at the other end if you've developed a drug where you have to take 2 grams a day. So just that total overview of what is drug discovery and development, why does it take so long, why does it cost so much? And this is the course that we've just produced and we should be releasing later next month. So watch the space if you do have students or if you're interested in a general introduction to the full value chain. And this was done in partnership with Merck Global Health. This is one of the new projects that we brought on board as well. So led from the H3D Foundation, and again, to refer back to the COVID and the lockdown and the conversations that were happening at the time, where really one of the big gaps recognized on the continent is this gap in manufacturing ability. And we really believe, instead of talking, let's actually just get going. What can we do to make a difference? And this is where we conceptualized this project on building API manufacturing process optimization. We found a partner in the States. It's Oak Ridge Institute of Science and Kinetichem, who have this reactor technology. We said, okay, if we can do a tech transfer, get this reactor technology established at the University of Cape Town and at other institutions across the continent, and then use this to allow us to do cost competitive manufacture of APIs, then we can really start to make a difference. Because I think we all know that if we can't produce drugs more cheaply than the competitors in India and China, then it's never going to take off. So it's not just that we need to do it here, but we need to do it better if it's going to succeed. Yeah, so this is the new project, and the students actually only joined beginning of this week. So we're excited that they're in the lab and we're going to start working on this. Again, I did mention that one of our missions is to create credible voice for evidence-based science. So we have been pushing to get word out there, to put out articles, to help shape the conversation that's happening. And this is done in partnership with IPMA. And you'll see here featured some of the articles. It's a mixture of op-eds as well as peer-reviewed articles. So you see in Nature Medicine, we published on fostering drug discovery and development in Africa. And more recently, we brought out a comment why including African data in drug discovery and development, and really why it's so important that we do more clinical trials on the continent, and that African data is included in the clinical process before drugs are reviewed, and really what those gaps are and why it is critical. So this is part of the real strategy to get out and start putting out a strong narrative for supporting African innovation. And finally, this just shows you where we are in terms of our current partners. You'll see, as I said, IFPMA is our main funder and partner at the moment. We also have a cooperation agreement with the University of Cape Town, of course, because we do leverage the H3D Centre's resources for many of the projects. IPASA is our local, so it's the local Pharmaceuticals Association of South Africa. Acelia is a small company in Barcelona who are developing open source AI tools to support drug discovery. And they've been one of our big partners promoting the use of AI. And more recently, APN has signed on as a partner with the H3D Foundation, which is also why I was invited to talk here today, as well as I've listed various of our funders. And of course, the ones listed at the bottom are this new API manufacturing project. And yeah, of course, I invite everyone to follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter, and to reach out to us if you're interested in learning more and getting involved in what we do. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I really do hope that there's going to be time for some discussion and questions.
There definitely is time, Susan, for the questions from the team, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's been insightful. Actually, I've learned more. It's like it was I would say a crash course, a master class on H3D Foundation. So thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. So this is a chance, guys, to ask our questions, to get to understand more about what we may want to learn more from Susan. So I'll open it up to the floor for you who wants to ask a question.
I can also say, so with the H3D Foundation, we are looking across the whole value chain. And I think initially it's low-hanging fruit or easy starting place for us is something like API manufacturing is a gap. The next big gap, which we know has come up in all the conversations, is regulatory strengthening as well, and moving more to the clinical side. So it certainly is an area we are going to start focusing on and seeing how we can work with our partners to strengthen what is going on across the continent.
Fantastic, that's amazing. And I agree with you in terms of the work that we're doing within the African pharmaceutical value chain. There's need for us to look at it across the value chain, from the research and development in the labs where the new products are coming into the market, but ultimately how to drive access so that the patient who is in a hospital somewhere will be guaranteed that they'll have access to that product. And unless we strengthen that ecosystem in that perspective, the researcher will be researching, but the product never sees the light of day. Without investing in the regulatory system, we're investing in manufacturing capacity and capabilities. So there's so much more that is needed. And therefore, that is where we need to look at how do we come into that space. And actually, that is one of the bits for us was establishing African Pharmaceutical Network to be a platform, to be a convening network where stakeholders can come together and discuss the frontiers on what they're working towards. And beyond just discussing and finding common nexus and areas of collaboration is actually starting those collaborative frontiers and ventures so that we're able to shape the future that we hope for. And that is what we are working towards. So that is a critical bit of how we can go about this journey. So anybody with a question, feel free to unmute your microphone, raise your hand as we get into it. So Susan, there's a question that is getting into my direct message. And the question is, as somebody who has just graduated, a young student who is finishing school, what possibilities do they have engaging with you? They're just done about the undergraduate program, engaging with H3D Foundation and H3D Center.
So thank you. No, we as the H3D Center, we're very much full-time staff members focused on translational research projects. So it is research at a global competitive level. So we don't have students at the H3D Center. We do have, as I mentioned, we do have strong links back into the academic environment because we are at the University of Cape Town, and there are researchers associated with the center who are supervising postgraduate students. So there is some space there. But I think this is also one of the reasons why we wanted to put out that free open course on Coursera, is just to say, these are the ways you can actually get involved in starting to solve the health challenges. These are all the different careers. So we've got fantastic lectures from our clinical partner. There's a clinical organization down the road from us in Stellenbosch who run all the clinical trials for TB. And they've come in and there are various panel discussions on, if you're going to become a clinician, what does this look like? How do you get involved? And then we've got on the early stage researchers, we've got researchers from biology, from chemistry, from pharmacology, speaking about what they do, what their job looks like, the career path that they took to get there. So I would say almost everybody at H3D does actually have a PhD in some discipline. We do have people who trained as pharmacists. We do have people who trained as chemists or microbiologists. And somehow or other, usually through some sort of postgraduate or postdoc training, they found their way moving into this more interdisciplinary space, which is what we call drug discovery. So it isn't one route.
It isn't one route, yeah, but the opportunities to engage and see how they can advance and see how the frontiers look like. Thank you for that. And there's another question in the chat from Nixon. You said you have a lot of support from the government and partners. Was this always the case, especially from the side of the government support, or were there hurdles initially? And if yes, how did you overcome these hurdles?
So yes, there are hurdles. I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to understand what's important for them. So with any stakeholder, any funder or government, whoever you're approaching for support, you need to understand what they're looking for. And for us, one of the things we have to do with South African government is to say, well, how do we fit into the bioeconomy strategy? So that the country has a strategy. They've put this together. They've decided that this is what they want to do in the bioeconomy space. How do we as a center fit into this? So that was the initial way we got in, is getting involved in those discussions and saying, well, this could be a key part of what we're trying to unlock as a country. In terms of maintaining those relationships, it's also a question of understanding what's important to them, which is why something like job creation, it may seem a bit of a weird thing to be throwing and pushing as a really important thing for us. But if we can remind our governments, just they're training up all these scientists, and the majority of our scientists are actually going and working internationally. They're going to Europe, they're going to the UK, they're going to the US, they're chasing the big fancy labs where there are resources where they can do good science. And it's understandable that they would do that. But until we have jobs for our scientists, they've got no reason to stay in the countries. And I think this is where, if you look at how much all the African countries are investing in training, we're very good at offering degrees. We've got hundreds of universities and we're training scientists in masses, but we're not keeping them. And that's the gap. So if that's the conversation you can open and say, well, something like this, if we can create spaces for innovation, we can boost the economy. We can create spaces where you could have some sort of entrepreneurial spin out. We can start setting up companies. This is what the government wants to see. So I think it's understanding what their drivers are and what their priorities are, so that when you speak to them, you're able to align and find a path forward that works for you and for them.
Thank you for that. Having that alignment with what the government priorities are and maintaining those relationships by engaging to serve that need. So that's very critical. Thank you for sharing that. And the other question that I have for you, for those who would be glad to join the mentorship program that you just mentioned, how does someone get to get a chance to be part of the mentorship program?
So drop me an email. So we're busy. Actually, we've just closed out the cohort 2 and cohort 3 for the mentorship program. Busy getting ready to put together a cohort 4. So this will be the 4th time we're running it. And yes, if you're interested, reach out to us. We do have so CP Plus Associates. This is actually a Swiss company, but it's run by an ex-South African. He helps us facilitate and organize the connections between the industry mentors and our and our mentees. We go through quite a rigorous sort of matching process where it's what is your profile, your scientific background, what is it you're looking for from the mentorship program, and making sure that you're matched with an appropriate scientific expert who can help you in your field. So yes, no, please feel free to drop me an email if you're interested in this program.
Fantastic, thank you. And whoever is interested, if you don't have access to Susan, please send it to us as APN, then we'll consolidate and share it with Susan for support as well. That would be a good one. Then the other question that is linked to the same presentation as well, the grant challenges that you normally run, when are we expecting the next round?
Yes, so, and I wish, I wish I could say that these happen frequently. We're busy in the process of finalizing these flagship projects. The proposals closed a few months back, and we should be able to make the awards from October, but those will run for 2 or 3 years before we actually look at more calls. I think the key thing here is we are trying to build and strengthen a network, which means that we're bringing people together, and even if it's just bringing you into the hub so that you're aware of what other researchers are doing across the continent, start to partner. As the foundation, we would love to be able to offer more grants. We need to talk to the right partners to bring the funding onto the continent. Certainly for the moment, what I can say is our focus is on infectious diseases rather than the non-communicable. I think it's easier to unlock global health funding in that space because the international pharma companies are still focused on the non-communicables, even if there is a great need for African-specific oncology treatments, for example. But for now, yes, stay connected. Watch us on LinkedIn. We will post. We will let people know once anything comes out. And we also have a mailing list that we could add you to.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much. Any other person with a question? Any other question? Seems you've done a fantastic job, Susan, and everybody is satisfied with your presentation, and all their concerns that they had initially have been answered. So we really appreciate, and probably I'll give you the last moment to give us your parting shot.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity to talk. I've been scanning the names on the list to see if I recognize anyone, and in fact, I don't. So I'd love to know more about everyone who is here and on the call. Feel free to reach out. Hopefully you're left feeling inspired about what we can achieve. There is hope. We certainly from H3D we believe we can, and we want to show the world that we will. And when the next pandemic hits, it's not going to be solutions waiting for solutions from global north. We're going to have them from within the continent.
Fantastic, wonderful. Thank you so much for that great presentation, that closing as well. There's potential in us, and we all just have to unlock that possibility within ourselves, do the work, and let's see how the results come out to be. Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
For those who are willing to engage with us, I've already shared the LinkedIn link to our account and the email address as well. If you have any concerns, please feel free to reach out. Great, thank you, and have a good evening, everyone. Enjoy.